Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode of Behind the Signs. I am really excited to welcome this guest, Kevin McBroom of Martin Signs from Cookeville, Tennessee. Kevin, we've known each other for a long time, man, so welcome. I'm really excited about chatting with you today.
Good to be here, brother.
Yeah. So we always like to start these off because it's always great, to hear people's journey, right? How they get into the sign business, and it seems like nobody followed, the same path. So it'd be great to hear. Tell us a little bit about your business and how you get in the industry, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, okay. So I was pretty much born and raised. I was born in Cookeville, Tennessee, which is where our sign shop is. And I was pretty much raised in Cookeville. I was a military brat, so we were kind of all over the place. But for the most part, I was in Tennessee and went back to Cookeville to Tennessee Tech to get my business degree and started painting some signs. I was working for my grandfather, who was a contractor and was building spec homes and doing land development. And so he was like, hey, Kevin, you're kind of artsy fartsy. Why don't you paint me some signs that say for sale and what plots are which and that sort of thing. And then that led to me actually, approaching some of my friends that had businesses and saying, I could make you a sign, because I was really wanting some money. And so I actually just learned how to paint signs. I would actually go and get magazines and tear out the fonts that I wanted and take them to the library and blow them up and then cut them out and trace the letters off on boards and just painted them that way. And that's actually how I ended up getting a job with Martin Signs. I did a sign for a friend, and Steve Martin, who owned Martin Signs, which they'd been in business for maybe 6 months, was there putting up a different sign. And my buddy went out and said, hey, you like my sign? My friend just got his degree from Tennessee Tech in business, and he's looking for a job. And I had no desire to be in the sign business at all. I mean, just like zero. I knew I wanted to be in business, but that was not it. Yeah. And so, but I couldn't find anything. And, and that was in 1988. And so I told Steve I would work for him for 1 year. And then after that, my wife and I had an opportunity to move out to Aspen for a couple of years, and then to Park City for a couple of years. And before I left, Steve said, hey, I'll give you half of my company if you'll stay and work for me. And I turned him down. And then 4 years later, I moved back and had to pay him a bunch of money to be his partner. And then about 10 years later, I guess, I bought him out. And then like I said, I never really wanted to be in the sign business. And so I started getting into other things as the business got to where it was easier to manage and, easier to run. And I had stable employees and not as much turnover. I got in, I actually ended up having a handful of different businesses, and then the recession hit. And I lost everything except for the sign company. I couldn't even afford to pay myself. And so that was, I guess the biggest thing we lost was we had a retail furniture store that was millions of dollars, literally. And so I had already kind of pulled out of Martin Signs, trying to keep that afloat from 2007 when the recession started. Through 2011, which is when we lost the furniture store. I wasn't working very much in the sign company anymore. I was kind of doing it hands off, so that was already happening. And then when we lost the furniture store, I had no choice, and we moved down to Florida, and I took a job with my dad, and he had a body shop in Jacksonville, and so I worked there for a year, and then he passed away unexpectedly in his sleep. A year later, and so he didn't have a will. I was in this big legal battle with his partners and his fourth wife, who really didn't like me or my sisters very much. And next thing I knew, I was stuck in St. Augustine, Florida, which is a great place to be stuck in.
Yeah, that's not a bad gig.
But I still had a sign company, and so long before Zoom was really a thing. I had to kind of learn how to run a sign company from 600 miles away.
Yeah.
And so fortunately like I said, I'd already been out of the company somewhat and had some good employees in place. And but anyway, it's been an interesting road. So I'm
Yeah.
in the sign business, but I'm kind of not. So
Yeah.
I own the company. The only thing I do today really is I do project work. And what I mean by that, like if we're buying a new laminator or a new truck, hiring an employee or something, I'll get involved. And then I do scheduling,
Okay.
and then I oversee the accounts, payables and receivables, but I don't actually do that myself. But we're a small company. We've got 7 employees, still in Cookeville there. So I don't know if that answered your question 100%.
Yeah, man, that's a great story. I mean, the entrepreneurial journey, right? I've had a couple different kinds of businesses over the years myself. I had a janitorial contracting business, 2 sign shops, and some other things that probably didn't turn out so well, and then some things that did, and now, of course, Sign Tracker full time. So no, that's a great story. It really is. So uh, one thing I kind of wanted to talk to you about more than anything else is, in conversations that we've had in the past, you have such a passion for, I guess, raising up leaders within your company, right? Like having really good employees, retaining good employees, and in whether it's in the Behind the Signs group or other Facebook groups, and just in conversations with folks that own sign shops. One of the biggest challenges sign shops seem to be having right now are finding and retaining good employees. And you've had such unbelievable success with that to the point where you can actually operate remotely, which is probably like a sign shop owner's dream, right? Get to a point where you don't have to be there 24/7. So, if we could kind of shift and talk about that a little bit, because I know you just have loads of thoughts about that. But before we started, I went on your website, and one thing that really jumped on me that I thought was really cool was, your about section, of course, and you had a bunch of photos of different things, some team building things you did with your guys and gals there at the shop. And I know recently you took your whole team to Vegas. But one thing you said on your site was, hey, are you looking for a career with a company that cares? And that really jumped out at me. So let's hear all your wisdom about finding and retaining and building a good team.
Well, it's definitely changed through the years, and you can recognize that. But one thing you said, I mean, it probably is ultimately the dream of the majority of business owners to say, man, I want to get to the point to where I'm not at my shop, and I can go and have a little bit more liberty to do things maybe more meaningful in life, or make up for lost time with family or whatever it might be. But even beyond that, really, and I know you understand this, but there's such a value to get to that point before you actually step out of your business, because you really need to spend as much time working on your business as you do working in your business. There's such value in that, especially if you're going to get these, grow, as you call it, grow these employees up into being leaders in your organization, people that you can rely on. And it's definitely different. I definitely didn't start off as a good leader by any means. I was a jerk.
No way.
No, but yeah. And I would tell people when I would hire them, I'd say, I'm going to be the hardest person you've ever worked for in your life, but you will respect, what we do here, and you'll like it, and you'll like the hard parts of it, and you'll respect who I am as a leader, because I'll respect you. But I will be the hardest person you'll ever work for, because I'm driven, and I kind of expected that out of my people. And it took a long time to get to the point to where, because you can't really do that today, in today's environment. You can't say, if you don't like it, don't let the door hit you in the butt on the way out, because they'll walk.
Yeah.
And so it's completely different. But we've got, like I said, we're a small company, but still our average turnover in our company today, which I'm really proud to be able to say this, is 16 years. And
that's crazy.
Well, part of that is it's kind of forced on me. If you think about it, I'm 600 miles away, laying in bed at night going, dear God, I hope one of my employees doesn't leave me.
Yeah.
Because I know what that means for me.
That's rough.
And when I was just there, I'm like, I'll roll up my sleeves and get to work and do it,
Yeah.
poop on them, they can leave, and I'll take their job on. Well, I don't want to do that now.
Yeah.
you know, and so it's forced me to do different things. And fortunately for me, I fell into line with some good mentors like John Maxwell.
Yeah.
And I
I
learned.
like his stuff.
Yeah, and I really learned how to become a better leader. And so I will touch base with you on this today, is because I've actually been doing some hiring for other sign companies, and around here locally, and they've hired me to basically post their ads on Indeed, do all these initial interviews, and do this process that I've got, the same kind of thing that I did at Martin Signs, which is a 3 interview process. And it is a nightmare to find people, and
Yeah.
that's why you bring this up. It's just hard, and I don't know, depending on the position, especially because there's a great varied difference between employees in the sign industry,
Right.
from installers, all the way up to production managers and everything in between. And Indeed and ZipRecruiter aren't just necessarily the greatest place to find
Yeah, we
help.
found that.
The number one thing I hear, like in the guru meetings and things like that, and on social media sites, is the number one position, without a doubt, is people are looking for installers right now. That's without a doubt the number one thing they hear. And a lot of like when I was running ads on Indeed, I literally went out of my way to recognize that for some people who are installers, they're not tech savvy. And so I would say, look, I'm going to send you this application, and I would have people who say, I don't have a computer, I don't have a printer, and I would say, if you can just figure out how to print this out, fill it out, snap a screenshot of it and text it back to me, that's fine, that's acceptable.
Yeah.
And the problem is, a lot of times people I think that your applicants will feel like they're intimidated. They're like, this isn't good enough for me to send in something like this. It's not perfect. Plus, you're not necessarily giving people your cell phone number to do that.
Yeah.
But you got to take out that barrier for them, and let them understand, I don't expect this to be perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, because there's, and I hate to say it, but it's true. I mean, you look at some applications and you can't help but chuckle at the spelling and the grammar and the answers to some of the questions and things like that. But I've got one, two, three employees who all came out of the food service industry.
Wow.
And I learned a long time ago not to hire for skills. Skills can be taught, attitudes can't, as everybody likes to say.
Yeah.
And, it's worked for us. And
That's good.
Right now we're trying to take on at least one new person, and I've told my guys, I will not advertise on Indeed or ZipRecruiter. It's not necessarily a waste of time and money. I almost said that. But it's not as fruitful, and it's not as easy to find people who are going to interact with your team well as if they bring somebody in. And so I've told them, when you go out to dinner, when you go to church, when you go to your kids' softball games or t-ball games or whatever, interact and try to find people that, are working these jobs that, they're just not happy with anymore because they want a 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 or whatever Monday through Friday job. And that's the same reason why we got these 3 employees I'm talking about. But they were tired of working nights and weekends.
That's an interesting way to do that, right? Because you're having them own the hire. And so I can see where they would be super motivated to make sure, first of all, that it's a good person,
right?
With the right attitude, but also just in feeling responsible for, bringing them up to speed and training them. That sounds like a great approach, actually.
Yeah.
So
not all
good.
the time, but in theory, it works.
I mean, at least it's a little bit of a warmer lead, right? If it's somebody that your employee knows, it's not like it's just somebody coming off of Indeed or whatever. Yeah, because a lot of the sign shop owners that I talk to, they've just had almost no luck with like Indeed and ZipRecruiter and that sort of thing.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, I can remember we've always had a couple of positions that we called the revolving door positions. And where I had this, now we don't have that as much, but man, it would kill me. I mean, you would go through, it seemed like you would hire somebody and train them, and, 3 months in, they're gone.
Yeah.
And it's just so costly and fruitless. So,
One thing that we did at our shop too is, are you hiring? Yes, we're always hiring. Like, we were always on the hunt for good people, even if we weren't technically hiring per se.
Yeah.
Like, we were always trying to take, resumes in. And I mean, Austin's a big and growing city, so it was a little easier for us. And our reputation, about how well we treated our employees was sort of out there in the industry. So we would get signed folks that would apply. And if an opportunity, not that we were ever looking to just replace somebody, because I always feel like if you're going to hire someone, try to do it right, from the beginning. And then, like you said, train them and teach them the skills they need. So we would, like you, try to hire people that we felt culturally was a good fit. But times are different, and
right.
And,
well, and if you're a bigger company, you can do that too.
That's
it's
true.
easier for you to create a position in a bigger company. But that would be good advice to anyone, I think. If you find that person that you think's got the secret sauce, you need to put them in your organization, even if you've only got 3 or 4 employees, and you need to grow around them. That's easier said than done. You got to have money for payroll, but still.
Yeah, so for you, I know for me it was, and maybe there was just me. I always had such a hard time. I'm Italian, we're control freaks, right? But like getting to that point where I could take a vacation without feeling that pressure of having to call in. I mean, ultimately we did have layers of management, but do you do okay with that personally? Like, you feel like, oh, it's everything's in good hands, or do you still sometimes struggle with that?
Well, we were talking yesterday, and we were talking about, this one employee that you had, and you can't write a policy for every situation. No. You don't think to put down, okay, one of our policies is you can't go back to one of our customers and rob them after we're finished that day. And so you don't write policies for everything. And yet at the same time, and I don't know if you feel this way, but I got to a certain point where I realized that I always had this little thing in the back of my mind that said, my employees know everything that I know, even though I've not taught them. If I've said it one time, or even if I just do it enough, they should get it by osmosis. And in reality, they don't. And people it causes frustration if you don't have systems and you don't have policies, procedures, and things like that are straightforward. But even if you do, those have to be something that you're constantly, whether you want to call them core values or whatever, you are constantly going over with your employees so that they understand this is what's important to me as the owner of this company, and this is who we're going to be as a company, and it's just those little things that you got to continue to do. And one of the questions that you asked me is when do you get to the point to where you can feel like you can really trust your team? And you were asking that because I'm so far away, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But the honest answer is you never do if you're a smart leader. Because everybody, including myself, needs accountability. If I'm left to my own self, I will become lazy. I guarantee you, I'll take the easy route out. But if I've got somebody there, making me, toe the line, or even like, I've got a minority business partner, and him being a part of the company holds me accountable, and I did things completely different before we brought him on as a partner. And now that he's a partner, I'm like, yeah, normally I would do this, but I can't, because I'm going to have to ask him like if it's okay, and it's going to be embarrassing because I know it's really not okay. Well, it's the same thing with your employees. They need that accountability, and it's just like with your children. Trust is something that's built over time, and and yet they can do one thing and it's gone. I don't know if that answered that, but anyway.
No, it's good. No, that's really insightful. All right, so Kevin, one last question on your website. That statement that I'm going to come back to. Looking for a career with a company that cares, and so let's you take the word company, take the word cares, and obviously this is business and cares. You can care within the company, or is it personally? So we chatted a little bit about this the other day, and how is it that you communicate as a company to your employees that you really care about them?
Again, I think that that's changed a lot. And over the years, and definitely in me as a leader, um, and it partly is because I think we've gotten to a place now to where, I'm able to work, like I said, more on the business and not in the business. I'm able to be a better leader in knowing my employees better and knowing what their needs are. And in the past, we've really, I think, kind of focused on saying we care through a strict policy kind of thing where we this is how many days you get off, and if somebody dies in your family, this is how many days you get off. These are ways for you to make extra money, those sorts of things. And today, it's really more along the lines of us just paying attention to the needs of our employees. And I think maybe that's the way it's going in businesses as a whole, not just in the sign industry and not just with my company. There's especially like if you look at the distance working, remote working, those kind of things. I'm sure you guys have experienced that with your daughter's business. Because it's easy in that type of a business as opposed to a manufacturing company. But yeah, it's a matter of taking the time to know your employees, know what's going on, as I say, behind closed doors, what's going on in their house. And that's hard because some employees want to tell you everything that's going on in their house.
Right. Yeah.
And some don't want to tell you anything. And so it's just like, I had a call with one of my sales people earlier this week. And it's the first thing I said to him, and he wasn't wanting to talk about this at all. And I was just saying, he's retired military, and and he's just not that kind of guy. And I said, hey, so how's things in your house? And he's like, yeah, they're fine, and I'm like, well, how are your kids? And I know that he's going through things with his kids that I've gone through with mine. And so I open that kind of thing up, and it's those opportunities that you find something and that maybe there's a need there, and then you just ask them and you say, well, is there anything that the company can do to help you with that? Is there anything that I can do to help you with that? And we do things that are very unique, and we try to do them in ways that other employees don't know that we're doing them for that employee, because then everybody would be going, hey, what about me? And that's not the idea. The idea is when the time is right and the need is there, you can step up, whether it's as simple as, like we had an employee who said, for this semester, my wife's work schedule's changing, and I really need to be able to take our daughter to work, and I need to come in an hour late and leave an hour early every day. And I was like, is that just for this semester? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, okay, we'll make it happen. Whatever it takes, we'll figure it out. And those kind of things go a long way in, that retention of those employees.
Yeah, for sure. I am definitely a believer in empathy and vulnerability as a leader. But that conversation would take another hour, and the Behind the Signs tech team would pretty much shoot me if we started down that road. So we'll have to come back and revisit and talk about empathy and vulnerability as leadership traits. But Kevin, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time here today. I know you're working on some other projects that are coming down the pipeline here pretty soon that I think are really important. So I'd love to have you back in the future, but I can't thank you enough. So everybody, Kevin McBroom, Martin Signs, thank you, my friend. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Joe.
All right. Bye-bye. Thanks so much for listening. Please comment below and be sure to share with your sign industry friends. Behind the Signs is provided to you by your friends at Sign Tracker, a cloud-based project management and quoting system for sign shops of all types and sizes. Try it free at sign-tracker.com.